Hey there, my name's Alex and this video is going to be all about harvesting honey. Where does honey come from? What exactly is it? And how do beekeepers harvest it? That's what we're going to be looking at today. Now, if you have a strong colony of bees during the spring and summer, you will likely experience something pretty exciting, and that is a nectar flow. And what exactly is a nectar flow? It's when there's an abundance of nectar secreting flowers that the bees are making the most of and basically bringing that nectar back to their beehives. People call it a nectar flow because nectar is literally flowing into the hives. And you really notice that week to week. If you put on an empty honey box onto the hive with no weight to it, you can come back a week later and it'll be absolutely full of honey already. It's crazy how quick this can happen. Nectar flows that I have experienced last anywhere from a few days to a few weeks long. And this is all dependent on the type of flowers that are flowering and also the weather. If it's raining when the flowers are blooming, the bees aren't going to be able to go out and forage the nectar, which means you're not going to have any honey. There's a lot of factors involved when it comes to a good nectar flow. And that's why honey crops year to year vary so much, is because the weather's always different. The flowers are always secreting different amounts of nectar. But if everything does come together perfectly, you can have many, many boxes full to the brim with honey in only a matter of weeks. From observing my beehives, I've seen about 10 kilograms of honey come into a beehive within 1 week. This is when you realize how much can get done when 50,000 or so bees are working together with one goal in mind. Now, what makes beekeeping quite interesting is that depending on where you live, you have different sources of nectar available to the bees. And these different flowers that the nectar is coming from produces very different types of honey. Although it is possible to harvest single origin honey, which is honey made up of mostly one type of flower's nectar, for most beekeepers, you sort of make do with what you have around you. Here in the southwest of England countryside, we have hawthorn, clover, blackberry, lime trees, horse chestnut, sweet chestnut, and they're just a few of the common plants that contribute to the overall honey crop. If you wanted to get a single origin honey, you would have to put your beehives next to a certain plant where there's an abundance of them. This spring has been a particularly good one, with plenty of warm weather and a surplus of honey coming into the hives. So it's time to harvest some spring honey. So some of my beehives are getting incredibly high now. It's the 20th of May, and I think I'm gonna do something that I've never actually done before, and that is a spring harvest. Never before have I actually had enough honey in the spring to bother harvesting it. I've always just waited until July time and then done a big harvest. So we're gonna open up this hive and see what we can take off. Not all of it, but maybe a box or two. Oh, wow. So this, for example, is a full frame of honey. Both sides, you can see it's capped over with the white capping, which means that it's ready to harvest. The important thing when you harvest honey is just to make sure it's got a low enough moisture content. When the bees cap it over like this, it means that it's ready to take. There's probably 1.5 kilograms, 2 kilograms in there, which is crazy. So from going through all the hives, we've got this box full of honey, and also this one, even heavier. Oh, I can barely lift it. Now these are actually brood boxes. They're a little bigger than the supers. I can see why people don't use them as honey boxes, because if you have to lift a lot of them, your back is going to be broken. But I'll just show you what we've got in here, because it's rather impressive. We've got about 15 frames like that. I don't know how much weight of honey we've got, but it's quite a bit. And there is just a perfectly full super frame. They've really built the comb far off the frame. It's so thick. That is such nice honey. Wow. Now we're not actually going to take the honey right now. We're going to take it maybe tomorrow or the next day, and I'm going to put on this board. This is a one-way escape board. Bees can go down, but then they can't get back up. So we place this on top of the hive, then we put the honey box on top. The bees come out of the honey box. No more bees in the super, and the honey box should be nice and empty of bees. That's the plan. So the one-way board goes on top of the hive and then goes on the box of honey. Yeah, quite high. So in a couple of days, we're gonna come back and take the honey home and do a spring harvest. I think we've got quite a bit of honey already. It's 2 days after I put the escape boards on. So there's not many bees in here because I used those escape boards, but there's still a few. So we've got this blower. We're gonna put that straight in the car where it's safe. First box. We've already got 3 boxes here. We can probably fit another 2 on top, and then we're gonna have to start putting boxes in the back. I'm gonna put another super on this, because basically what I've done is I've taken off some boxes and now there's the same amount of bees, but they're confined into a smaller space. So I'm gonna give them another box. And on goes the lid. Wow, that was successful. We got all the honey out. I'll tell you what, having a mini blower like this is so handy. It doesn't hurt the bees. The bees are tough. They just get blown away and then they fly back to their home. It's crazy how quickly the bees come and find it all again. So you have to get quickly in the van. Oh, there's still loads of bees in this one. But the trick to getting them out is just to leave them in the box and close the door to the van. All the bees will fly to the windows. I'll let them out later. There's only a few frames in that one. And now for this great big one, which feels like it's gonna fall over any minute now. There we go. That's the spring harvest in the van. Now I must go home, bring everything into the kitchen and extract it all into buckets. It's better than last year. Last year I had hundreds of bees flying all around my head when I was driving. So what flowers do I suspect this honey to have come from? Over the past month there's been a variety of plants flowering, notably the hawthorn in the hedgerows and the dandelions in the fields, and also a neighbour's brassica crop that had gone to flower. I think it could have been oilseed rape, which is known for giving a good crop of honey. It's pretty hard to know exactly what flowers this honey is made from, and you'd have to do lab tests to find out and have an accurate result. So let's run through the process of extracting the frames of honey. So first, a frame of honey is taken out of the box and the wax cappings are cut off. All frames are different, some are fully capped over with wax, some not at all. So each frame is dealt with slightly differently, but these wax cappings, if there are any, they need to be cut off to allow the honey to come out of the cells. This is done with either a knife or an uncapping fork. And once the wax cappings have been removed, the frame is placed alongside 2 others in this 3-frame manual extractor, which spins the honey out of the frames. This shiny stainless steel piece of equipment cost me about £150. So the honey is being thrown out of the frames to the side of the extractor, it then drips down to the bottom, and once there's a decent amount of honey collected at the bottom of the extractor, the valve is opened to allow the honey to flow out through a couple of sieves. This basically filters it before going into the final bucket. After extracting 2 or 3 boxes, it does become quite a repetitive task. Once you know how to do it, it's just a case of doing it over and over again until it's all done. But I kind of like that. I quite enjoy the repetitiveness of it, being able to put on some music in the kitchen and just extract a load of honey. Once all the honey is in buckets, I double check the moisture content with a refractometer. The reading showed 17% water content, which means it's at a legal level. 20% is the cutoff for all honey in the UK, apart from I think heather honey, which is 23%. So we're going to dive a little deeper into the science of honey. First, it starts as nectar from flowers. In this form, it probably wouldn't taste that sweet, as it's mostly made up of water. When the weather is right and the flowers are secreting nectar, the bees go out of their hive, collect that nectar and bring it back to the hive. This is where the bees do some pretty cool chemistry. The complex sugar in the nectar called sucrose is converted into simple sugars like glucose and fructose using the enzyme invertase that the bees produce. Once the nectar has been inverted, it is slower to crystallize and it's also easier to digest. The liquid is then dehydrated by the bees until it has less than 20% water content. And at this point you have an incredibly stable food product that will pretty much last forever. As well as being a lovely sweet pantry essential, honey also contains many other beneficial things such as vitamins and minerals, antioxidants, and of course all the pollen granules from the plants. It's actually amazing how much variety you can find in honey, especially from beekeepers selling single origin honey. This variety of honey is something that you don't really see in the supermarkets because the honey, when it's produced in mass, is normally a mix of loads of different honeys blended together. I think it's kind of like wine. If you buy a wine which has been made from grapes from just one field and then compare it to a wine from another field, they could be very different. However, when wine is blended, it all kind of tastes more similar. Well, it took me the best part of 3 days, but we finally have the honey extracted from the beehives. Now every single one of these buckets is loaded with honey and we have a total of 90 kilograms. So this is 20 kilograms more than my best ever harvest. And this is only the spring honey. Now over the past 3 years, I've only ever managed to harvest a summer crop, which is normally harvested around the end of June, early July. But all this honey here is like a bonus crop, which I never have managed to get before. And what this shows is that my colonies were strong enough to go out and make the most of all the spring flowers. But my beehives are still growing. There's more and more bees being born. The colonies are getting bigger and bigger, ready for the summer crop. Every year I've been keeping bees, it's quite clear that there's a period of 2 or 3 weeks in June, normally middle end of June, where heaps of honey come in. So if the same thing happens this year, hopefully we're gonna get a load more honey. But what I want to do with this spring harvest is turn it into a soft set honey. You're controlling the crystallization so that when the honey crystallizes, it crystallizes in a very fine structure and so it stays softer. So coming up over the next month or so, we'll be processing the spring honey, making candles from the wax, and also keeping up with my weekly checks on the bees to make sure they're all healthy, ready for the summer nectar flow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.